Hi everyone, this is Jason Zach from Nathaniel School of Music. In this lesson, we are going to look at how you can properly set up and prior to setting up also plan a home studio space for you to work in. Be it to record music, be it to just jam, be it to compose or maybe even teach or whatever you're looking to do based on the number of musicians that you're going to deal with. Is it for just you and maybe a couple of friends or a family member, or is it an entire band or a choir that you're going to work with? So a lot to deal with, a lot to discuss. So stay tuned till the very end. We're going to look at all the gear, we are going to look at room considerations and the general equipment you might need or might need to invest in, and hopefully we don't forget even the smallest ingredient among them all. So before we get started, it'll be nice if you can consider hitting that subscribe button, turn on the bell icon for regular notifications, and if you like the lesson, don't forget to give the video a like and share it with your friends. Let's get cracking. Right, so let's have a look at my setup and look at some of the gear and the room first of all. Let's get in. So first off, when you're setting up a home studio, you have to figure out some considerations. Are you renting the apartment? Is it your own house, or is it on lease, or whatever it might be? So you'll have to check with your landlord in which case, or if you're young, maybe your parents as well might need to know what's going on. So what we have done here is we are in an apartment which we own. So because of that, we are allowed to take the liberty inside the apartment. Now the apartment has its own construction. Obviously it has the concrete, it has its own brick construction, but there are steel beams that go throughout, right, to support the infrastructure. So the challenge there is you have to understand that sound will travel not only through air, it will also travel through the medium, through the mediums, and it propagates very well through the steel. So what you need to do then, if you want proper soundproofing, you will have to try and create a room within a room. So a room within a room. Now what is a room? A room will basically have walls which are now on my left or my right. Then it would have the side walls here behind and in front of me. Then it would have the floor, and finally it will have the ceiling. So the ceiling, the challenge we are living in an apartment, we are on the ground floor, so I don't have a sort of liberty to build proper concrete construction. So what I have done is on the ceiling we've done a drywall construction, which is a board which we call a sound block board. So it's a better form of drywall, you could say. So we've put that and we've suspended it with steel beams. So it basically decouples it from the actual apartment surface using a lot of material. And then for the floor, what we've done, what you see here, basically this is not the soundproof, this is just a basic wooden tile you have around town. I've put that, but on top of this we have plyboard. We have basically, you need good plyboard, so we have basically fungal resistant and fireproof plyboard which this rests on, and you want to clean it up before you put your wooden flooring. And also what's very very important is the plyboard has to then be taken above the actual apartment floor. So that will be needing a decoupling agent or a decoupling product, which is basically super thick industrial grade rubber, which you can get from your local store. Like in Bangalore we have a place called SP Road which is really good. So basically you put the rubber, and then on top of that we've put these pine wood beams. So it's pine wood beams, and then on top of that we've put basically plyboard, and ply is a very rugged material as well. This studio has been around for at least about 12 years now, and it's stood the test of time, so to speak. So that's your floor and your ceiling. Coming to the walls, you have to figure out based on, I guess, the amount of space you have and also the cost of labor in your respective part of the world. So what we've ended up going for is we have this brick wall construction. Those are wire cut bricks. So those are good for soundproofing, very good in fact. And yeah, we've just put wire cut bricks. Again, we've decoupled it with that industry grade rubber. And yeah, you have a brick wall construction. And it's always good to buy or source out these materials one by one. I preferred doing it without a contractor, not only because it costs a hell of a lot more, it's also a scenario where you are more in control. So you know what went wrong. Did the bricks go wrong, or did the decoupling go wrong, or did some aspects of the soundproofing go wrong? Basically, soundproofing, when you, if ever you do set it up, you have to treat it like an aquarium. Even with one hole in that aquarium, the sound is going to travel and the aquarium will basically become useless. So now the room is set up. There's just one more thing left, that is your door. Now this is a challenge which I found. You might have that much of a problem, because when we moved into our apartment, if you'll just come this way, so this is basically the hall of the apartment, and this was once a window. So we had to, block it off because of soundproofing. It didn't matter much because there was another apartment there and there's nothing much to do or see basically. So we blocked that off. And this is the drum area. So we wanted the drums to also have its another layer of soundproofing or preventing the vibrations of the drum kit from going to our own room. So to do that, we've decoupled the drums with this drum riser. So these are considerations you might want to take. And then of course you have the challenge of doors in any music studio. So the bigger problem with us is, maybe it was a mistake, I don't know, but we set it up such that it's in the hall of an apartment. So in the hall, this is like a 2 BHK room. So you have 2 bedrooms, the kitchen. So we've had to shut off the kitchen. We've had to remove this window. So that leaves us with doors needed for the entrance, the 2 kitchens. So that leaves us with the doors required for the entrance, the 2 bedrooms. And what we ended up doing is, because we have another apartment where we live in, so we've had to sort of cut off the space or make it easy for us to transit from this apartment to the next one. So basically, long story short, there are 8 doors which have to be built and 4 holes created. So there's a hole in the 2 bedrooms, there's a hole in the entrance, and there's a hole in the partition between the 2 apartments. And whenever you build doors, the basic logic would be, again, you need to have an air gap. So even with the floor, as I told you, the plyboard is not directly touching the concrete ground. There are these pine wood beams on top of which it is, and then you have the decoupler, which is rubber. Same story for the door, and same story even for the ceiling. Basically, that drywall which you see there is not touching the roof. Under that, there is about, in between that rather, there is about a 9-inch gap. And inside that gap, what happens is, when sound goes from me to my neighbor in the first floor, and from him to me, let's say he's just dragging his sofa or whatever, to prevent that sound from coming to me and my sound from going to him, that air gap is useful, but at the same time you need absorption inside that air gap. So what we have there is, we have glass wool. So glass wool will absorb basically the reflection coming between the surfaces, and instead of the bouncing, it will just absorb it. So the same concept with the doors. We have this door here, and then it goes into another door here, where we work and take our classes as well. So even in this door, you'll find absorption. So this is glass wool packaged here all over the door, and just a bit on the door, you'll find that it's a very, very thick door. We've used MDF, which is good enough, you could say, at the time when we made it, and a good number of layers. And in between that, you need insulation as well. So there are decouplers, not decoupling rubbers, but you have these decoupling liquids. So basically, the liquid I use was called green glue, which is a useful product. So that's about the soundproofing for the room. But now when you do all of this, it's going to sound horrible. Soundproofing does not make the room sound good. Its job is just simple. It's to prevent stuff from going out and to prevent stuff from coming in. So now when you're in the room, it brings me to my next topic, which is sound treatment. So the first thing you need with sound treatment are things that absorb and diffuse sound. So absorption is very needed to cut out reflections, especially first reflection points. So if I show you, let's say, this drum area where a drummer would normally play, what's going to happen is any of the first reflections are being absorbed by these panels which you see here. Okay, and what is a panel? It's basically, again, absorption, glass wool or rock wool or even synthetic wool. I recommend glass wool or rock wool. In my experience, glass wool has worked best on the walls, and here also we have absorption. The inside here is rock wool. So we've used rock wool here. There's something about the density of rock wool which works better here, at least for me. But you could let me know in the comments what you prefer. So there's rock wool here, there's glass wool here. I haven't found the synthetic foam very useful, to be honest. And you put these panels wherever you want to absorb sound, or honestly wherever you can absorb sound. Like for example, if you see the door here, the door is also a point of reflection. So we put an absorption panel here with our Cool School logo. So what happens is, again, when you go here, automatically, if you can hear me, your voice immediately changes compared to when I'm talking like this, right? So the sound quality versus that versus something like this, very, very different. So what we then did was we put this wherever we wanted. We've also put some of the absorbers on the ceiling. We call these as ceiling clouds. So you want to put it on top of where the work happens. So drum recordings happen here, and where I work, which is the mixing area, again we have the ceiling clouds on top of where I or whoever my engineer is or whoever sits here. It could even be a person editing a video or working on a short film or working on a piece of music or a tutorial. We need it to sound good. So what we do is we've kept the ceiling cloud, we've cut off the first reflection points, hopefully, but it is as good as what we can do given the space. So the last thing I'd like to tell you with respect to treatment would be something you could consider if you have a smallish room, which could be compact shelves. So what I have here, what you see here, it's a nice place to store instruments, you could see, but to be honest, it sounds horrible. So if I go here, I'm reflecting, or the trumpet and the trombone and the guitar frequencies are resonating as I talk. So it's a horrible way to record. So what I figured out was, can we make this a place for storage? You know, we have some shelves, and could we also use it for recording? So what we figured now was, on the same panel, we have wheels on it, so you can kind of move it wherever you want, as you can see. And you might have seen this in a lot of our YouTube videos, but you may not have seen the other side of it, which is to do with sound treatment. So if I go here, it's a great place or a great way to sing. So there's absorption material, and also if you see the partitions here, these are also diffusion panels. So we've calibrated it so that it also diffuses sound. So it diffuses as well as absorbs sound. Diffusion is basically you break up sound into smaller amounts and just reflect those smaller portions. So it kind of gives your room a bigger, larger than life kind of feeling. You know, it doesn't feel like you're in this claustrophobic studio, which, to be completely honest, is something I never liked. Growing up as a recording artist, I've always hated being in these tiny spaces where you have to do, you know, vocal takes or percussion takes or whatever. So I always wanted a big room where, not necessarily a big room, a big enough room where you make things as compact as possible. So you have your storage one side and you have your sound treatment. So if I have to record drums, I would bring this close by to the kit, and or guitar, or my vocalist would be here, my horn player or whatever it is. We will address this, and depending on the sweet spot, we do our recording. So that's basically about sound treatment. Now coming to how you would set up your desk for work, and a few things with regards to the often forgotten pieces of equipment that you might find. Right, so now to kind of set up your desk space for your work, well, you need basic equipment. You don't have to, you can always do it in a kind of a scalable kind of setup. What I have currently is a pair of monitor speakers, which are generally placed at a 60-degree, or it forms an equilateral triangle between your ears, the speakers. So that's generally the setup. And ideally you would want to set up the desk in a symmetric part of the room, like the middle or somewhere. Unfortunately, we didn't have the option, so it is what it is. So it is here. And on your desk, you might want to consider your keyboard. Some people have keyboard trays, which I don't like, because I like to play keyboard all the time. You'll have your computer, your disk. You'll have a few places where you keep your stuff, where you patch your equipment. However, you need to plan this really well. You have to say, okay, in my room, I'm going to record this many musicians at a time. So that could end up being a pianist, which is you perhaps, or with a guitarist, with a singer, or maybe an entire rock band. So if you want to record a volume of artists, a lot of musicians, then what you need to do is plan your audio interface. So if you see what we have here, this is the main business end, so this is my audio interface. It's a legacy Zen Studio. It's connected to a basic Mac Mini, an Apple product which you might know. And kudos to Mac Mini, by the way, because the new Mac Minis are really good with the Apple silicon chips. So this goes somehow, wires up to the computer. We have a good, not a good, but an okay enough using app to control everything. So it shows you the preamps. This one has 12, which is why I like it. Now you see 4 in the front, you'll see 8 at the back. And to route things to musicians, you'd want to also look at your headphone monitoring. You also might want extra preamps, which you see here. So yeah, I have my headphones set up. You have 2 headphone inputs. So what happens here is you'll need to manage your cables, because in this area itself, just for maybe audio equipment, we have about close to 85-90 cables, from what I know. So you'll have to manage this pretty well in a desk. And also, I don't like, because now I'm at the entrance of my room, and if I have to record drums, the cables have to go a long way, and it's going to get cut, it's going to get spoilt or messed up or whatever. So what you want to do is have a patch bay. So if you need a patch bay, or what are the reasons why you would get a patch bay? A patch bay is when you have a lot of inputs and outputs, a lot of I/O. If you're just recording yourself and a few friends, you may not even need a patch bay. You can just take the XLRs directly into the audio interface, connect it straight. But with a patch bay, what you can do is you can send signal from anywhere to anywhere. So for instance, this mic which you see here, which I use for recording, this is channel 3, which I usually use it, but I can so easily keep it connected and switch out something else there in my audio interface, which is another channel 3. I could even have a signal splitter or a switcher, so I can assign what channel 3 would be. It could be this mic, it could be something for my melodica. So you have to keep everything compact, so to speak. And also, if your musicians are far away from you, you need your cables to get to them. So this space is set up primarily for the engineer working here at this space. So whatever I have, my mics are all patched, so I can play my instruments. I can just get the cables out or the stand, adjust it, put on probably the phantom power, and get my work going. However, for the people who are at the other side, you need a patch bay. So I'll just show you that finally to conclude this desk setup. So before I go there, it's basically monitor, speakers, you need a desk, you need to probably look at whether you want to invest a lot of money and get one of these off the shelf desks, or whether you want to do something DIY like what I ended up doing, which is just get plyboard, get a laminate sheet, get a decent enough carpenter, measure it well, and so I've these considerations are important. I've kind of measured the longest possible keyboard, and the longest possible keyboard can fit here. So at the time of doing this, if ever I buy another keyboard, I feel that even that would kind of slot itself in the length and the width or depth, and keeping all that consideration. And you also want to manage your cable. So before we'll now go over to the patch bay, and prior to the patch bay, you might also want to see, you want to put some of these cable supports or cable systems or cable path conduits, so to speak. So this would allow you to kind of neaten. As you can see on the ground, there's not much, there's no cables there, right? So coming now to the patch bay area, which is pretty simple. Part of the sort of studio setup with your cables is the patch bay. So we have this long rubber, this piping, which is bringing in a lot of inputs and outputs from there into this super thick anaconda kind of cable. It's really thick, and it comes all the way neatly here, and you have all of my cables, my XLR cables. So for example, this is channel 6 of my audio interface, but look at how far this cable has traveled. So I can basically do about, in this room itself, I can do about 60 feet of cabling, because I have the patch bay, and inside we'll show you a better picture of the patch bay because it's right inside there. Inside that you'll have all your inputs and outputs, and the outputs are basically my headphone cables. So this, for example, goes to my drummer. So the drummer gets about a 30-foot headphone extension cable, and I prefer to not use wireless inputs, at least in the studio. Try to run wired stereo as much as possible. And if ever I connect to any guitar or bass, I have DI boxes as well here. You can build your own DI rack as well, but we just prefer DI boxes. So DI boxes now will take an XLR input from the patch bay, and the output of that would go into your guitar. So you will get a very no noise kind of setup. So I can do 12 inputs from here. I can even do 6 or 8 outputs, I think, and I can have an entire band, a choir, or a bunch of musicians working at it in this room. And that's how you have to think when you set it up. Now, just a few final considerations. Do you need all of this stuff while you're working on a home studio setup? My simple advice is no. This is just to be aware of what you might be getting yourself into, and also understand a few simple reality checks. For example, a lot of students who I teach production would get this combo mic package, which would basically give them a condenser mic, it would give them a headphone, and it would give them an audio interface with an XLR cable. Now when it's packaged with the same brand, that brand is probably only known for one good thing, which is their audio interface, right? I don't want to take names, but I'm sure there are a lot of these things happening. Now, step number 1, you're buying a condenser mic which is not rated. It's just a kind of a combo deal, so you get one mic free. Mic is very, very important, isn't it? So the other challenge is, now you buy that condenser mic and you do zero soundproofing, zero sound treatment. The condenser mic is going to pick up everything around you. For example, this mic. This is a blue bottle condenser. So this will pick up, it's a beautiful mic, but I use it as a drum room mic for the most part. So it will capture the entire room. While this is a dynamic mic. This is a Shure dynamic mic, and you also have your workhorse dynamic mics right here. SM58, SM57, and some artists have won a Grammy just by using probably one of these mics, or maybe this plus this. So what you need to realize when you're setting up a space is don't plan your entire budget, and don't work with too many people either. Just ask yourself, in the next 5 months or so, or in within a year or so, what are my goals? What do I want to achieve? Maybe I want to jam with a couple of friends, record keyboard via MIDI. So then whatever keyboard you have just plugs in, you can record it via MIDI. We'll teach you how to record MIDI very shortly in the next part of our series. And then you would want to record a vocal or a mic in parallel. So you just need two things. So just get a 2-channel audio interface, record when it's not too noisy, or maybe you are in a non-noisy neighborhood. So you can, if you use a mic like this, like a Shure SM58, it's going to capture only the person here in this region, and it will pretty much remove everyone else around him or her. Okay, and similarly, if you're recording a guitar, you might want a couple of cables, a DI box, or plan, or maybe future proof it to a point that it's about 2 years in, you're thinking of you're envisioning it 2 years into the future, where at the max you're going to do 4 channels. So then you don't need soundproofing, you don't need sound treatment. But the way I would put it is, if you want to do, working with multiple artists, and if you're making a lot of noise like what I do, because I love working with real drums, I don't use drum loops and all that. At least I don't want to. That's always my last option. My first option is to get a human being, a proper a drummer in my city, jam with him, record him, and that's what I love about making music with drums. You need the actual drum kit with the actual drummer. So just because of drums, you'll have to change so many things. But if you just want to produce electronic music, mix and master well, I think just inside the room, keep it as best treated as possible. You don't want too many harsh frequencies to ring out or resonate annoyingly. So you want to work out what's in the room, but then you have to deal with the logistics of soundproofing. During the afternoon, there are a lot of guests in your house, or in the morning there's too much of kitchen noise, or the best time to record is probably in the night, or you want to wake up really early and do your work. So you have to look at the reality of all that. And yeah, this is what you generally need. If you'd like to know how the budgets of all this work, in a short summary, we can do that probably in another chapter, in another lesson. So let me know your requirements so I can probably plan a budget for you. A great way to do that would be to become a Patreon member, so you can interact with me personally and share me some of your pictures of your room, and maybe make a video and let us know what you'd like. And also join one of our production lessons. We teach production at our school alongside basic instruments like piano, guitar, vocals, drums, and so on. So if you'd like to grow as an arranger, composer, producer, mix engineer, or even a songwriter, do consider heading over to nathanielschool.com and fill up a form, and you can reach out to one of our course advisors who can plan a semester for you, right? So this part was about setting up a home studio. What are the gear, what are the considerations you might need, room within a room, absorption and sound treatment versus soundproofing. Very, very different. Sound treatment is to improve the sound in the room. Soundproofing is to prevent you from reaching your neighbor and your neighbor from reaching you. Okay, so that's basically about it. So I hope you found the lesson useful. As always, this is Jason Zach from Nathaniel School of Music, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I will catch you in the next one. Cheers.